Hey everybody. So this is Intro to Robotics. Cami isn't working. We're not using Cami, so it shouldn't be an issue. Go over to classwork. We're on Monday. Intro to Robotics Study Guide. Um, What are the three main branches of study in robotics? If you can't remember, take a look at your gradebook. One of the categories of your gradebook is for each of those branches. Be able to read code for Autobot and describe what different lines do. So, things you might want to think about: a function is a command in the line of code that tells the robot what to do. A variable stores a set of information, usually a number. Import and variables, that's the part of the code that's above the setup that we generally tell it if we're going to import other libraries, other sets of words that other coders have written and that we're not going to rewrite. What is an integer? A whole number. Loop, that's the part of the code where it keeps going over and over, and that's where you essentially are writing the instructions of what you want the robot to do. Setup, this is where we define where pins are and what we want the robot to do one time without repeating. So what's the first thing it does before it goes through its function? Digital write, this is where we send a signal to a particular pin. We send it, we send to this number pin. It's either a high signal or a low signal. Serial print, this is printing to the screen some form of information. We did this with our ultrasonic sensor where we said serial print, what's the distance? Delay, we tell the code to wait for however many milliseconds, and that's the integer that's between these parentheses there. Um, and that's just so the human is able to respond to something before it moves on through the code, because if we don't have that delay, it does things so quickly that we can't even see it happen. One of the common errors we had with Autobot, someone forgot to put a delay, and they said, well, it's not doing the movement. Well, it's trying to do the movement at like the speed of electricity, so you can't see it trying to do it, and the motor actually doesn't make the motion. So that's the issue, is that it's running through that code and it's doing it over and over, and it's the motor doesn't have enough time to actually respond if you don't have the delay. Pin, that's the numbered pins in the Arduino board. When we talk about the pin, that's the actual physical part of the Arduino board that is connecting to the motors. Pin mode, this is where we tell a particular pin if it's going to be an input. Is it going to be giving the Arduino information like the ultrasonic sensor, the input it gets from that, or output for a motor, or for, I think it was the trig pin was the output. High, sending a voltage. Low, not sending a voltage. Servo, that's that special kind of motor that does a part way rotation, but only limited to, I think ours were actually 210 degrees, not a perfect 180. But those are the motors that we used. So being able to look through this code, this is the import and excuse me, this is the import and variables section. We define certain variables. This is a long, these are ints. We're defining that. This is the setup function. We set trig pin and echo pin as output and input. And then we have serial begin, which we don't really have to explain. But then the void loop, we write to the trig pin, stop, don't send a signal. We delay for 2 microseconds. And then we digital write high, we send a signal to it. So it's sending out that sound wave. We delay for 10 microseconds, and then we write low. So it sends out a signal for 10 microseconds. And then it reads the signal. Duration is the pulse in, echo pin high. I'm going to jump down just so the explanation here. How does electricity flow? What's a circuit? Positive and negative, open, closed circuit. Be able to understand PWM, pulse width modulation. What is digital? Be able to describe what happens, what you need to happen for electricity to flow in a circuit. It has to connect from the positive and come back to the negative of the power source.